In a joint venture between the U.S. military and Grant Industries, the USS Razzia embarked on a voyage to the planet known as the xenomorph Hive World. The mission? To attain the precious royal jelly substance. Notable among the mission's members were Major Alexandra Lee. After Ellen Ripley's defeat of the alien Queen Mother and a large portion of her brood, Lee was among the alien occupation eradication units sent to Earth to remove the remaining hives in order to clear mankind's re-entry to the planet. Over those years, Lee rose from the rank of captain, and with each mission, her pure hatred for the alien creature continued to grow. Lee was the youngest holder of the Congressional Medal of Honor, and clear choice to command such a potentially dangerous mission. She accepted the call without hesitation, not for glory or accolades, but for the opportunity to kill more bugs. In her initial meeting, Lee stated that the idea of going to this hive world and killing bugs and stealing their life stuff is rather appealing. Dr. Amos Begali. Daniel Grant's described bug expert, originally hired onto the Grant Corporation after being bribed away from his position at a rival company, MedTech. Grant felt the acquisition to be worth every penny. Thought by his peers to not only have the best handle on the genetic makeup of the alien creature, but unparalleled field experience in their behavior. He was among the batch of scientists who immediately investigated the biochemical reasons for Xeno-Zip's harsh side effects. Begali theorized the reason that some people have been reacting to the drug in such a fashion is that their biochemistries are sensitive to the unique properties of the synthesized regular alien jelly. The key to solving this problem could be in a yet identified recessive gene. There's so much we do not understand, so much to learn, he told Grant. At the moment, our understanding of the genetic makeup of the aliens is not sufficiently advanced to clone either. We need to go to the source. I have reason to believe that the DNA avenues I have been exploring could result in drug breakthroughs far beyond mere Xeno-Zip. At the very least, we could obtain a source of the active ingredient in the cornerstone of your drug empire that could allow you to manufacture safe batches for a long, long time. And I have the feeling that the answer to my questions could lie at the source of what we need. Corporal Lars Henriksen. There was an intimidating presence to Corporal Henriksen. Daniel Grant had met him before takeoff and referred to him as the big fella. Henriksen spoke to the CEO for some time and expressed how he felt about his role aboard the Razzia. "This is a special mission," he said. "I can feel it in my bones. 9 times out of 10, a group of Marines head out into space. All they come back with are handfuls of boredom. I've had some of that out there, let me tell you. As soon as I got wind of this mission, though, special duty entailing a beachhead of the alien Hive World, well, I just jumped at the chance. Jumped. I've killed some bugs. Europe, mostly special services. That's probably why I got this gig, the experience. No, that's not it though, sir. You see, I've got this feeling that the human race is destined for great things in this universe. Destined. And I'd like to do my bit to make that possible. And I guess I'm vain enough to think I'm a talented enough guy to deal with the kind of situation we've got lined up for us. I've had people tell me that men are just accidents in the scheme of things. I don't think so. Why? Because we're men. We stand for something, goddammit. We've got values and order and, hell, purpose to bring what amounts to a lot of godless space. And there was Daniel Grant himself. Initially, the Neopharm CEO had no intentions of joining the mission, but problems back on Earth caused him to reevaluate his role. During this uneasy financial period for Grant Industries, certain loaners were getting impatient. Grant owed money all over, including to some very dangerous people. One, Morton Fisk in particular, was now out for Grant's blood. In the scrabble for solidity and power after the Alien Earth War, not all of the fortresses of fiduciary control were entirely legal. And often as not, to get the leverage you needed for truly inspired buyouts, you had to go to these underground people for liquid assets. Unfortunately, they were criminals. Violent criminals. Self-confidence was always the anti-grav stuff for Daniel Grant, the buy-your-bootstraps talent that hoisted him above the rest. Unfortunately, self-confidence could also be a blindfold. He well knew that he personally owed millions to Fisk and company, but since for Daniel Grant, mañana was always golden, well, he'd pay them mañana, when he had the money. Of course, he had a few months to get the opportunity to high-life it again. By then, hopefully, the money due to Neopharm and thus Grant Industries and thus Grant himself, the financial entity in the direst need, would have arrived. In the meantime, he'd be safe out in space on the USS Razzia. He made the arrangements with his military partners, and his explanation was hardly to be questioned. This mission is far too important to my companies, to me, to allow, not to contribute my presence, he told Major Lee. The matter was settled. The crew entered their hypersleep chambers, and the voyage began. 4 months in suspension began. Daniel Grant was left in the darkness. Darkness and dreams. Dream logic tangled in its own shreds and chips of reality and magic. For weeks, Daniel Grant dreamed or didn't dream, but in the overpowering darkness, the dreams were all he knew. Mobius strips of dreams, jump cuts, swirls of victory and laughter and glory. The depths of the past into secret and overpowering fears. Mostly, though, it seemed like a short sleep, for the dreams were only brief releases of hypersleep to allow brain function and REM. In the glass case cubicle, embedded like a fly in amber, when the mechanism and gas mix slowly began to gently pry him from his slumber, Daniel Grant only vaguely sensed the springing of the lock mechanism of his case. He clung to his dreams, clung to the darkness, a sleeper drunk on sleep. Daniel? A gentle female voice. Whose? It was sweet and kind and understanding. The kind of voice his ex-wife used to use in their early love, when he gave himself only to her. Mr. Grant, sir? It's time to wake up, Mr. Grant. Wake up? Where was he? We've got a lot to do. Grant realized that he was cold. He felt quite naked, shivering. He raised himself. He pried open his eyes. Peripherally, he saw the overhanging cables and cold metal of the hypersleep chamber. In front of him, crouching, was a good 8 feet worth of talons, bony notched spars, and open, angry jaws. An alien. He screamed. He cringed. Then he scrabbled back, instinctively throwing up his arms in a helpless gesture to protect him from this, the deadliest creature in the known universe. Even as he squirmed, trying to grapple over the side of his hypersleep cubicle, what shreds of his rational mind that still operated realized something. The thing wasn't moving. It was just hovering there. From the left, a woman stepped, holding a modular control unit. Major Lee. The beast before him was just a hologram. She laughed. I knew that would get you up and around. She tapped a control and moved the hologram away. Welcome to the USS Razzia, Phase 2. God damn you, Major. She raised a dark eyebrow. You want to be part of the gang, don't you, Grant? Just consider this a very mild hazing. You're a member of the fraternity now. He hopped out of his cubicle. One of 10 spiraled around a central control and supply center. Oh, don't worry, Mr. Grant. It's just a training hologram. See? Sorry, but your military yokes don't quite cut it with a civilian, Miss Lee. She grabbed him by the shoulder. That's Major Lee. They had obviously let him snooze a while longer than normal. All the other cubicles were empty. Why am I the last to wake? He said, getting up and out of the thing, steadying himself on the side. You seemed real tired when we left, Grant. We all thought you could use a little extra sleep. How far are we from our destination? The gravitonic engines are cut off. We've got to use regular impulse engines to cruise among the planets. We'll be in orbit around the Hive World in 4 days. She smiled. Are you ready for some action, Mr. Grant? It would appear I've already gotten some, Major. What, from Black Fang here? She smiled. Just a training hologram. No reason to be embarrassed. Some younger recruits have soiled their skivvies because of Black Fang. Looks like you pretty much did okay. Grant snorted. You have quite a warped sense of humor, Lee. I guess we're going to have to talk about that and some other things in a few hours. Right now I'd like to get some pants on. He took a deep breath, got his bearings, and headed off in the direction of the locker room where he'd left his clothing. The locker room was down a narrow corridor. Showers, toilets, benches. It looked, smelled, tasted like something out of his high school sports hero days. Funky, but somehow homey, oddly comforting. A tall blonde man was in the corner, buckling the belt of his pants. Oddly enough, he was wearing dark glasses. They made him look more like the MacArthur School of Officer than a corporal. The big fella. Henriksen, You just got out of cold sleep too, buddy? The corporal turned and looked at him. Early this morning. Just finished exercising, sir. Just kicked my butt out of bed now. Wonder why they kept me down so long. Maybe they just wanted things spick and span for you, sir. You know, said the corporal, times like these make me wish I could pop a tab or two of that Xeno-Zip you make. Unfortunately, tests have determined that chances are pretty good that I'd go berserk, even on the regular stuff. Damned skittish metabolism. Oh well, Grant said paternally. I'm sure you're a damn fine soldier without it. He grew thoughtful. I'll tell you, Henriksen, you must be pretty sick of that major of yours. Major Lee, our commanding officer. She had a bug hollow waiting for me when I woke up. No kidding. She must like you then. Like me? Scared the hell out of me. Said it was some sort of hazing. Tough. She's pretty tough, all right, the major is. Grant was surprised. Come on, we're friends. You don't have to pull that loyalty crap with me. Tell me the truth. You've hated her for months, right? Henriksen's face was immobile. Behind those shades, his eyes were unreadable. She's tough, but I think that's good. I've only served under the major since she called me from the ranks to be on this mission. She's earned my respect. There are codes in games, just like everything in life. You learn the ropes, maybe these little attitude snits, well, I guess you've pulled a few in your time at Grant Industries. Daniel Grant considered. I suppose I have, in my own charming way. Good point. The major is totally in command, and she treats everyone as an equal. There aren't many people you can say that about. And if she chooses to dump a little extra shit on your ears, he shrugged. Well, then, like I said, she must like you. See you at the briefing update, sir. The big man was gone. Grant sighed. He velcroed his ship shoes and made a pit stop at the head. The briefing room felt like the interior of a metal egg, subtly lit in curved corners. All of the soldiers assigned for planetfall sat in rows of comfortable slanted chairs as though in some military theater. They sat at a kind of alert attention. Professionals. Damn good people, all of them. And Lee should know. She had helped to select every single one of them. Okay, listen up, people. I promise you right now this is going to be no party. But we didn't come all these light years to party, did we? We came to help make this galaxy safe for peaceful, sentient life. As long as these things infest any of our planets or ships or space colonies anywhere in an uncontrolled and above all misunderstood fashion, the future of humanity is threatened. These killers, these reprehensible aliens, have just got their claws and their blood and their teeth and their incredible powers of survival as weapons. She paused for impact. Our ignorance is their primary weapon, and I hope to diffuse a little more of that with you today. The soldiers all looked entranced, hanging on her words. These people had been briefed on Xenos before, but now they greedily lapped up the information she was presenting. She began with the parameters of the mission. Quite simply, people, as much as I'd like to say all this is perfect and noble in our mission, it's not. We're going to a planet which is the origin of the Xenos in this sector of the galaxy. We'll be using a specially fitted lander. People, we've got the latest in technology at our disposal. Basically, we're going in to do a robbery. Now, ultimately, I have no doubt this will be in humanity's best interest, so take whatever nobility you can from your participation here. However, what we're up to here is the biggest heist of Queen Mother Jelly in history. We're on a glorified drug run. Take my word for it, though, I'm personally assured that it will make someone a great deal of money. And maybe even help the human cause as well. In any case, be assured, we're taking the alien Earth war to the source and will most certainly kill lots of Xenos in the process. Call it hardcore vengeance, if you like. Call it just another job. In any event, we're here together so I can provide you with some information and equipment designed to preserve your sorry lives. Quickly, she rattled off some of the basics about the Xenos, their behavior, their attack patterns, individually and in groups. She summarized what was known about the Hive World and what the main hive itself looked like from the information provided by the previous expedition. It was all like a mantra, and she ticked off the info point by point. Now then, as for the interior of the hive. She thumbed the projectors to a prepared setting, kicking in the holotank in the corner. Like some magician, she conjured up a vision from the depths of Hades. Here was the familiar bowel-like tomb, ropey with intestoid projections and rigid with tubing, bumps, and alien growths, organic in the very worst and most frightening sense. In the central portion of this chilly site squatted a huge bulb-like protuberance, like a half-planted flower bulb. However, instead of bright and colorful plumage, its pustule-like sides sprouted tubings that connected to other, slightly smaller bulbs. And from its top, like Mephistopheles happily squatted atop a pile of his own excrement, rose a gently swaying royal giantess. An alien queen mother. "This is where we'll find that royal jelly that Mr. Daniel Grant has sent us after," she said. "The material we want is in the large central sac, but these smaller pods are what we must keep our eyes on. In fact, any one of those smaller pods may contain an incredibly vicious creature more dangerous than any you or I have encountered to date." A call from the group of soldiers. "Except my mother-in-law." Laughter followed. Lee allowed a slight smile. "Anyway," she said, "this is all second-hand info and I can't guarantee its accuracy. So let's move on to something I know a little more about." She keyed the hologram program controls. Black Fang appeared. "Almost like an old friend, isn't he?" The overlay highlighted the midsection of the beast. "I want to tell you why you should avoid these targets. While a shot to the chest will certainly stop the creature, it will also create a very bloody wound. The same can be said for the head, and the spatter potential is even greater there. As many of you have already discovered, a shot to the knee will not only hamper the alien's mobility, but such a wound also minimizes bleeding and spatter potential." She turned to the audience, most of whom were on the edge of their seats with suspense. Lee turned quite serious. "I know the blood issue is of great concern to all of you, so I'm happy to present an innovation that should all but do away with your fears. For more on that, I turn you over to Dr. Zato." The man waltzed into the room like a stand-up comedian just called on to do his act. He was a toady little guy who blinked as though the light was too much, receding hairline, high IQ dandruff. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said in a high Munchkin voice, "I give you your next best friend." The assistant walked into the room slowly, clearly a little weighted down by what he wore, but not uncomfortably so. Armor. Here it is, folks. The Z-110 Acid-Neutralizing Combat Wardrobe. The assistant wore a streamlined, snazzy-looking jumble of plates, silver and blue in hue, a combination of insect and tortoiseshell. On the back was a compact storage unit, a narrow, visored helmet fitting snugly over the head, an antenna angled out of the back. Lee had seen it before, but the sight of it still impressed her. And if it could do what Doc Z claimed, well, all the better. Efforts to produce an armor resistant to the intense acidity of the alien blood have proved impractical. Before, the suits that worked were too heavy. Therefore, what we have here is a self-contained, osmotic, demi-atmospheric suit that does not resist, but it extirpates. The moment alien blood touches this wardrobe, the threat is eliminated altogether. It's a form of plastic, and it can be cut, but it's even better than skin. It naturally reforms its previous mode within seconds, and chemically rebonds itself. A healing process, if you will. In all details, the interior, the articulation, and the booster servos of the suits are identical to what you have been trained to use. The other aspects are self-regulating. Maintenance will be needed, of course, but only after an encounter with the enemy. I should emphasize that this armor isn't perfect. It will wear out, though it should stand up during battle. Nonetheless, try to avoid any alien blood if you can. Don't go wading in it. He nodded to his assistant. Go ahead. Let them have a close look. The man strode around the room. The soldiers poked and prodded the model. Grant approached Major Lee, taking her aside. This is all old news to you, Major. Would you please come with me? I have something very important to show you. Corporal Henriksen waited for them at the turbolift. Lee was taken aback. Henriksen, what are you doing here? Henriksen remained stoic. Mr. Grant called. He asked me to meet him here. I'm here. Grant punched the button for the lift. The door slid open, and they all stepped inside. Aware of lights, compression, off for another level. I'm not an elitist. I want to show you what we've got here, to give you a better understanding of what's going on. That knowledge on your part may come in handy later on. Helps us a lot. It also gives you a better idea of what we're going to need down on the Hive World. One little condition, said Grant as they walked along the catwalk on Deck E, approaching doors that looked like an entrance to a bank vault. What I'm about to show you is strictly hush-hush. I don't want anyone to know about this, especially not the other men, or women. That's why I'm just showing it to you too. I feel as though you can handle it. Without further explanation, Grant cycled open the door and led them through. The lights were more muted here. It had almost a submarine quality. Lee immediately noticed the equipment. Banks of it spread along the ways. Tubing and bulking computers and flanges. Cables and glass and blinking lights. A number of men were clustered at the far end in front of a window that looked like something out of an aquarium. Grant's scientists, doing their geeky scientist thing. Mystery wrapped in machinery and mundanity. It smelled in here. Acidic. Oil. Electricity. Coffee. And something more. Something that made Lee's hackles rise. She recognized it. Faint, but there. Bugs. What happened here? Isn't this supposed to be a storage chamber? She said lamely, trying to get Grant to talk, trying to get the creepy feeling out of the pit of her stomach. Oh, yes, said Grant, leading them down some stairs. And in a way it still is. But the cargo, that's what's a little unusual. The steps clanged and echoed. So, Grant, said Henriksen, why all the secrecy? Why just us? They were walking forward, and through the murky light in the glass tank she was able to pick out a few details. Cables, dangling equipment, something bulky and organic in the very middle, and by it, an egg sac, and the discarded shell of a facehugger. She walked up to the window in a haze, astonished, looking in upon the gruesome scene enclosed in metal and glass. Well, Corporal, I know most Marines have come to really hate the aliens, said Grant. I'm afraid that what we've got down here would really hinder the morale necessary for the operation. A thick-set man with a boyish face and a cowlick in his massive blondish hair scuttled up to Grant. This is Dr. Murray Friel. He's in charge of this project down here. The science part, anyway. Yes, I've met the commander, but not the corporal, said the doctor. Lee remembered now. There had been introductions and handshakes on Earth, and then the batch of docs, including Friel here, had been swallowed up by these decks. But it wasn't Dr. Friel that preoccupied her now. She was looking at something else. It looked like a misshapen excuse for a body, but with limbs and head cut off and lengths of esophagus and intestine connecting it with organic machines nearby. Liquids pulsed through these, feeding it. What is that thing? Said Lee, overcoming her initial horror. Friel, care to do the honors? Suggested Grant. Why, it's a donor clone, Friel said proudly. DNA clamped so that it would grow simply the torso, no brain, limited nervous system. A machine regulates it. These things are usually produced for the purpose of organ and tissue donation. I'll admit it isn't the most attractive creature, but it's proved useful. He tapped his arm. I'm proud to say its cells of origination were retrieved from my wrist. It's an interesting experience, I must say. Lee shook her head. She was finally allowing herself to assimilate the evidence presented to her here. She turned to Grant. I've seen this before, she said through clenched teeth. You're breeding one of those damn things. Take it easy, kiddo, said Grant. First, everything is quite secure here. The torso is in special suspended animation. It can't blow until the right switches are hit. There are reinforced windows, special alloy cages, alarms, and automatic laser lattice should something unforeseen happen. But that thing in there, it's living. Only in the crudest terms. It doesn't feel any pain, it doesn't think, it's just basically a mass of tissue that serves a purpose. The Gali was monitoring the computer readouts. Dr. Friel, he said, the clone's vital signs have gone irregular. It's beginning. In the tank, the hanging torso began to jerk. In the hanging torso, the alien embryo, already formed and at full term, but previously kept dormant by electronic and biochemical means, shivered into full life over a matter of mere minutes. It shook, It gasped, sparked by the energies that had been shot through it and the instincts that had been ignited. It flailed in its seating. Membranes tore, muscles were yanked from their mooring. Still it was not yet free. Instinct activated. "Here it comes," beamed Bagali. With a preternatural power, it pushed up against the diaphragm, up through the tangle of lungs and heart and arteries, up against the rib cage. Then, with its hard equipment prepared for just this moment and every bit of its energy, it plunged through the bones, through the skin into the freedom of gaseous atmosphere. The torso exploded. Blood spattered. Bronchial tissue splattered up like an eruption from a volcano. Bits of broken bone sponged against metal and glass. Like a worm with a head of all teeth, the alien chestburster reared up above the carcass of its birth, weaving in a sensory dance. "I've seen enough," Lee shouted and turned away. She ordered Henriksen to come with her. Grant seemed taken aback. "Major, Alex, you were there at the initial meeting. I saw you there. You heard everything. You're aware of our ultimate goal. You know what we're here for. You've got it all wrong." With that, she turned and stalked the hell away from this charnel house in the belly of a starship. When there are no cycles of the sun and moon to distinguish the days, how does one mark the passing of time? Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Everyone knew that the service chow sucked. You didn't join the Colonial Marines for gourmet food, that was for certain. In a corner of the cafeteria, Private Jastro was noodling on his saxophone. The man didn't play well, but he didn't play badly, either. At least, if it wasn't exactly melodious, it wasn't that grating either. However, his buddy, who was sitting beside him as usual, didn't seem to appreciate it. "Could you give it a rest, Jastro?" "What's wrong, Ellis? I thought you liked music." "I like music fine, but not blaring in my ear while I'm eating." Jastro stopped playing. "Just a little anxious is all, and who can blame you? I mean, we got some heavy stuff ahead of us." He pulled out a bottle of Grant's wonder drug, Xeno-Zip. "So I'll let you have a little of my stash." Ellis waved the offering away. "I got plenty of mine left, and you should save yours. They're supposed to be for endurance, remember? And I doubt we'll get much sleep once we touch down at Bug Central." Jastro nodded in agreement and gestured over at Corporal Henriksen. He had just come in, walked through the cafeteria, taken his food, and was walking out again. "Hey, check it out," said Jastro. "Henriksen's doing it again. He's taking his food to his room. The bet's still on here. I say he's a synthetic." "Give me a break," said Ellis. "They make models that eat, you know." "It ain't just that. He won't shower with us. I've never seen him shave, and as far as I can tell, this is his first combat mission. A guy that size, on a planet crawling with crickets, and he never saw any combat? I'm telling you, the bastard ain't human." The next thing he knew, Henriksen was by the table. "Jastro, why don't you just say what you've got on your mind to my face?" He lifted the private off the chair. The sacks banged onto the floor. "Come on, say it to my face," Henriksen demanded. "Say it." Ellis attempted to intervene. "Look, man, no one wants any trouble. Here, take Jastro's Xeno-Zip." He held out the bottle in offering. "That should make things even." Henriksen kept his grasp around Jastro's throat. "Hell, you think you've got trouble now? You should see what happens when I take one of those." He knocked the Xeno-Zip from his hand. "Nice try, Ellis, but I think I'll pass." The bottle fell to the floor, rolling just outside the entrance of the cafeteria. It stopped at a pair of boots, those belonging to Grant, who had been observing the confrontation. He picked up the vial of his drug and calmly addressed the corporal. "You know, Corporal," he said, "I admire a man who doesn't take any crap. I honestly do." He came up to them, and his easygoing arrogance seemed to cut through the tension. "But the truth is, I need every last one of these troops for this operation." Henriksen released his grasp, and Jastro gasped for air. A faint smile from Grant. "You don't have to kiss and make up, but please don't mash his skull, okay? Thanks." Henriksen nodded. Lee dismissed him. He took his food and went off again toward his quarters. Lee turned to the others. "All right, back to the chow. I don't want any energy-deficient troops when we get down to work. As an example, she went back to her own plate, which had gone cold. Nonetheless, she began to stuff it in her face. Grant came over to her. "Major," he said in a low voice, "can we talk a moment, please? Alone?" She agreed to go with him, to somewhere they couldn't be overheard. "Look," Grant said, "I didn't know you'd react the way you did down there. Corporal Henriksen took it well. He's even volunteering to double-check security. I just want to make sure we're still getting the best out of you on our mission, Major." "There was never any doubt about that, chum. You asked for the best, you got the best. But I want to tell you I'm not real crazy about your methods. What I'm doing is for the benefit of mankind." She laughed in his face. "I don't think I want to hear this. You don't have to try and pull that one on me. You're doing this for the money." "Believe it or not, I'm trying to save lives." Lee was in disbelief. "What are you talking about? You're risking good marine lives for this friggin' jelly. For profit, you ruthless bastard." "As well as my own life. And I'll have to do it again as soon as I run out of this stuff. Unless I can bring a source home with me." Lee knew where he was going with this. "No way, mister. If you want to kidnap that queen mother thing, you're not using my people." "That's not what I meant. Just hear me out. My researchers tell me that if we feed that infant creature down below on this jelly, if it matures to queenhood surrounded by the goop, it will become a queen mother itself. Yes, ultimately, my goal is to make money." "You call it ruthless. I call it survival." "So I've had you all wrong. Is that it? You're not an opportunist at all. You're the best kind of humanitarian." "All right, that's enough." "No, I mean it. I'm seeing you in a new light. What's your next move, St. Dan? I've got it. What about world peace?" "I'm sorry, Major. I thought a full explanation might improve our shaky relationship. But if you insist on keeping a barrier between us, then to hell with you." The klaxon began blaring all throughout the Razzia, cutting their conversation short. Grant looked around, stunned. He reached to the intercom. "Grant here. What are those sirens for?" A response from the other side. "It's engine room C, Mr. Grant. Some sort of acid has violated the cooling system." A sense of urgency overtook Major Lee. She grabbed Grant. "Damn it, Grant. Engine room C is right below that incubation chamber." When they reached the cargo bay of Deck D, they found the cause of the alarm waiting for them, bathed in emergency light. Hovered over the dead infant alien, wearing their acid suits, were the science team. Daniel Grant paced beyond the reach of any acid, punching the air and cursing. God damn it, what the hell went wrong? I'm looking at a multi-million-dollar loss here, minimum." Dr. Friel knelt closest to the wreckage. Tears were streaming from his eyes. He had gathered the bits and pieces of the alien baby and cradled them in his arms. Acid-neutralizing liquid had automatically been splashed, but there were still pocks and holes in the floor. "Who would do such a thing?" sobbed Dr. Friel. "So young. So very young. She didn't even get to see me." The stricken scientist spun on the assemblage. He swung an arc with an accusing finger. "Which one of you monsters was it?" Tears runneled down his cheeks. "Which one of you killed my baby?" The finger stopped on Lee. "Was it you, Major? You despised it the moment you saw what was going on here. I could tell." "No, it wasn't me, you fool," she spat back. "Would someone get a shot of something for this hysteric, something strong? And maybe a straitjacket?" She motioned to the wreckage. "And douse this stuff in some more acid neutralizer fast, in case the blood wants to eat through the deck anymore." "I trust you'll help me establish better security here for the return trip," said Grant. "Of course," she said. "Major, can you account for this rifle?" "It doesn't belong to any of my people, if that's what you're implying. There's a gun and some ammo missing from the surplus locker below, and everyone on the ship has equal access to that." Grant paused in thought. But not everyone on the ship knew about the creature, did they? The USS Razzia has locked into orbit around its destination. 10 hours from now, a landing party will descend to the planet's surface. The members of the crew do their best to get some rest. Most of them. Daniel Grant sat alone, drinking. The meeting room was secured, peripheral sound dampers down, communications off. Major Lee appeared before him. "Mind if I join you?" He looked up. "I wish you would." The two sat across from one another. Lee poured herself a libation. "So," said Lee, breaking the grim silence, "who do you think it is? An emissary of the organized crime boys you owe money to? Or one of your drug company rivals, like MedTech?" "I don't get it," said Grant, shaking his head. "I can't believe I overlooked this possibility. Everyone knows that if this mission fails, I'm history." "If you ask me, it's better this way," said Lee. "Something tells me you would have gotten more than you bargained for with Dr. Friel at the helm." Grant sighed. "You're probably right, but that isn't the point. This sabotage will continue, and a lot more than money could be lost next time." Lee shrugged. "It's hard for me to be frightened of a corporate spy when we've been fighting drooling monsters for years." "Yes, but how often have you run into infiltration? Don't you see? You and your soldiers have always been united against an obvious threat. Take it from someone who knows. Nothing is deadlier than the enemy within." The USS Razzia locked into orbit around the planet dubbed Hive World. Hive World, of course, was not its official name. That would be G435 for obscure classification purposes. It was the fourth of 10 planets orbiting Achilles II, a geostar. It was a Class M planet, with a great deal of seismic activity that rendered it generally flat and comparatively barren. Huge banks of clouds obscured the surface, but analysis sensors had already scouted out the geographic area that was known to be the location of the alien hive visited previously. 0 hour approached. The mothership naturally would not descend. Powerful thrusters roar in silence, ripping the 70-ton lander from its moorings. But against the vast black void, it's a tiny vessel that gracefully steals away from the mothership. The USS Anteater descended. They were still well above the clouds, but the atmosphere started buffeting the lander, shaking it like a toy. "Turbulence," called Fitzwilliam, up in the pilot blister with the best view. "No shit, Sherlock," said Tank Tenares. He flipped on the PA. "No smoking, no trips to the can, fasten seatbelts, all that stuff. It's going to be a rocky one. I'm reading some pretty fierce mid-atmospheric activity. This place ain't exactly paradise." The lander began to rock and jerk violently. This continued for some minutes. The twirling lengths of gray cottony clouds seemed to reach up like an ocean of mist and absorb them. The rattling and rocking continued and then calmed down. "Okie dokie, folks," said Fitzwilliam. "We're through the worst of it. We should be done in about 35 minutes, so sit back and enjoy the flight." Occasional comments arose from the troops, but generally there was silence. Finally, the cloud cover started to break up. "Still can't see much down there through the cloud cover," Fitzwilliam said. "How about zone radar topography?" "Geez, this unit checks out, so this reading must be correct," said Tenares. "Yeah, so what's it say?" Fitzwilliam shot back. "Well, judging from the surface activity..." There was a slight gulp in Tenares' voice. "There's a war going on down there." In this series, I'm recounting events taking place in the aftermath of the Earth War as depicted in the Aliens comics and novels. For more on the events of the Earth War, please see the playlist on the end screen and in the description below, and stay tuned for the latest videos. As always, I'd like to thank you very much for watching today. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to give it a like, and be sure to subscribe for all the latest videos from Alien Theory. A very special thanks goes out to Alyssane and Grizz4756, Queen Tiers of the Patreon Hive. Very special thanks goes out to Lady Anne in the Ellen Ripley Tier of Excellence, and in the role of WEYLAND YUTANI Executive, NanashiFx. If you'd like to join the Hive and support the channel, check out my Patreon page for exclusive posts and contests. In the meantime, you can catch up with Alien Theory over social media. Follow at alien_theory on Twitter and at alientheoryyt on Facebook and Instagram for more. And until next time, this is Alien Theory, signing off.